I'm Chaffee Groff, and I am the sole proprietor of Restaurant Solutions. I do a combination of offer services for my restaurant clients, financial, staffing, and operations. And I found that mostly people would like to find out how to save some money. So today I've chosen product costs, specifically food costs, keeping in mind that beverage costs also follow most of the same checkpoints. Whoever orders, for instance, if I place the order and you're doing the receiving, there needs to be some sort of a trail, whether it's a checklist, inventory sheet, or something that tells you I ordered 6 steaks at $5 a piece, and whoever's receiving understands that so that they don't check in 6 steaks at $6 a piece. So the ordering and receiving component, I think, is a very key one, making sure that there's communication. I think the process of ordering and receiving, most of the chefs I've worked with, they get it, they understand it, but I think oftentimes it is 2 different people. And so the communication piece is dropped at times. I think one of the things that I find in observing operations is things get checked in during a busy, hectic schedule. Oftentimes they're signed for by someone and left by the back door. So the first thing you need to make sure you do is actually put the product away so that you don't have it gain its feet and head outside. When you're actually going into a walk-in or a freezer, FIFO, first in, first out practices should apply. If you put it in the wrong place and it spoils, you've lost your product. So making sure that your walk-ins and your freezers are well maintained, organized, labeled, and clean is a good way to save on food cost. Waste is ubiquitous in our industry. A lot of things happen to do with yields time of year. If you buy spinach, some time of year you're going to get a 45% yield, sometimes you're going to get a 75% yield. People aren't careful with the product, they don't have any vested interest, so they just blow through and get the prime things and toss the rest of it. You have some chefs who are not very good at utilizing all of their product. Creativity. Some are very creative but don't have the time, so things get tossed. Things get spilled and wasted. I think it's really important to keep a waste sheet, both in your kitchen and in your bar. It's not so much important that someone dropped a 40-gallon container of chowder-based, cream-based chowder. It's more that we've noted that so that if we have a food cost problem at the end of the month, we can take a look at where it might start. All recipes should be costed out with what we call an ideal. You should be able to see what your protein, what your starch, what your vegetables, what your total plate presentation is. Does it come with or without butter and bread? Making sure that all of those costs are associated first, and then as you're price pointing it, and then making sure that there's consistency. One of the things that's, aside from food costs, that's important is that guests come to your place for a consistent product. And if they're used to getting a salad that is this size and they come in the next time and it's smaller, or the next time it's larger, not only does it impact your product cost, but it also impacts your guest. I think some of the best people I've worked with have photo books, so when they're training a new person they can see this is what this plate should look like. If it goes on the right plate, you have actual measurements, particularly with volume. If you're measuring your fries with a handful, you've got people with hands this size and you've got people with hands this size. So a spec and a standard is really important for consistency and cost management. Training is crucial. We set clear expectations, we train people, and then we hold them accountable. So if you tell somebody to go in and create this dish the way they think it ought to be, you're going to get a number of varieties, some which can be great and some which can be very poor. So training them the way you particularly would like it done. I realize that in some restaurant environments, you're hiring people for their total creative skills and let them fly, and if that trust has been established, then that's fine too. But I even believe if you're highly creative, you still need to cost out a recipe so you understand what's going to be the flow through the bottom line. And part of it is how much knowledge the chef has, how much time and attention they're paying, how much they've faith they've put in training and making sure that people understand what the expectation is, how important waste is, how important portioning is, how important the whole ordering, receiving, inventory process is. I think it comes from the top. If it's an owner-operator, then the owner needs to set the tone. If it's a corporate environment or someone who has multiple units, then I think the GM chef team should be on the same page. GM is typically responsible mostly for front of the house, but I think they have to have a very good working knowledge of the kitchen as well. Chef needs to be able to drive the process and support what they would like to see, what he or she would like as far as end result goes. Don't make things too tempting. Again, putting things away on receiving, letting people understand that you're going to give them a lot of autonomy in your workplace, but that you will not tolerate any theft. It's part of your policy, it's part of your training pieces. Personally, I'm a fan of locking up key protein items. It could be as simple as a chicken wire cage with a lock on in the walk-in. Most of the chefs that I know who have done a great job with product cost eyeball it when they come to shift, and then they eyeball it at the end of their shift as well, and somebody does that in their absence so they can tell if they had 12 lobster and they sold 2, then they've only got 5, they have a problem. So partly eyeballing, partly communicating, partly being present, trusting, looking at your numbers, tying in your point of sale records with your actual product levels. You allow a line item on the budget for crew meals. You assess what style of meal you're going to put together. I'm a huge fan of some of the boutique chefs who put together a family style dinner. So there is one meal available. Preferably they sit together and have it as much as possible. It's not a free-for-all. Most of the clients I work with, kitchens, get meals on the house. I've seen times where they have 2 or 3 meals in an 8-hour shift. So I think setting the expectation that you're entitled to a meal per 8-hour shift, and here's what you may have. It helps when the managers aren't helping themselves to steak, when the crew members can't have that as well. So I think the best way is to set up a crew meal program, cost out your menu items, and basically say you offer a dozen items. We assign a number. It's going to cost us $2 a piece to put these meals out. So we had 8 people on shift who ate tonight, that's $16. That's going to go in our budget. So it shouldn't negatively or positively affect. I think crew meals, when you have a system, are a privilege, so they should be tasty and they should be costed out. When it's measured and monitored, I don't see it being a big impact. Again, I would think that you would want to put in your financial statement. I'm used to seeing a line item for comped products. We're going to have mistakes. Guests are not going to like things occasionally. So as long as we usually use a 33% number. Mm-hmm. If something costs $10, we're going to put in $3.33 to cover the product. Looking at information again on your point of sale to find out how many things were comped that day, because it's the cost of doing business. Mm-hmm. And then the other piece of it is trailing a little deeper so that if 5 of your 22 servers are generating the most comps, then you have a training issue and you just go back and retrain. Huge. And in our modern day of everything's computerized, I think it's still important to be able to eyeball an inventory sheet and say, gosh, did you really have 178 pounds of asparagus? And I'll hear, oh, that was supposed to be 17.8 pounds. So actually looking at the data, making sure that your units up measure and your vendor information is correct, making sure the price you're bringing in the back door is so that you do all of your extensions, you're going to end up with the total package. You want to make sure you've identified all the areas where your product might be. There might be something on the line, there might be something in the walk-in, something in the freezer. If it's a dry storage item, it might be 3 or 4 different places in the restaurant. Inventories, I believe, should be done consistently by 2 people minimum. 1 calls and 1 records. Not 1 person gives you too much opportunity for somebody to manipulate it if they were of that ilk. They should be done. A huge hint, I think, is make sure your year-end inventory is absolutely accurate. Maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people participate, so you get a good start on your jump start on your new year. Personally, I think monthly inventories are fine. With my teams, if we were within a point of the goals, then they were okay. If they were more than that, then they'd have to do them every other week or weekly, depending on the severity of the difference. I would ask a bunch of probing questions. What are the key components in managing a product cost? What are the key components in managing a labor cost? What are some of the page 2 operating accounts, and how successful have you been? By the time I've asked enough probing questions, they usually can give me a pretty good snapshot of how savvy they are. If you bring in 6 steaks at $5 a piece, you have $30 invested. But if you sign for 6 steaks at $6 a piece, now you're $36. So you have a food cost problem. If you don't put it away and it walks out, you have a food cost problem. If you put it in the wrong place in the walk-in and it spoils, you have a food cost problem. If you haven't trained your people, server and cook, server to listen for medium rare and not turn in medium well, cook to actually know how to cook a medium rare, you don't have those loss problems. If you've got people eating them for crew meals. So this poor steak that you got in the back door has a number of ways to really poorly impact your food cost if it's not monitored. So I guess in wrap up, the same types of components are appropriate for beverage. You've got your ordering, you've got your receiving, you've got your inventory, you've got rotation, you've got labeling, you've got waste, you've got consumption, you've got theft.